That's a really sharp question. And if you sit with it for a moment, it starts to feel like, this wasn't accidental. Let's approach it simply first. Imagine watching two kinds of films. Some films are fragmented. They jump between scenes, flashbacks, pieces here and there. You don't get the full story at once. You get what you need, when you need it. Most Quranic narratives work like that. They are distributed narratives. A scene appears in one place for a specific purpose, warning, reflection, argument, and another part appears somewhere else, in a different context. But the story of Joseph is different. It unfolds continuously, from beginning to end, almost like a single, uninterrupted film. Why? Because it is not a moment, it is a process. Most Quranic stories focus on key moments: rejection of a prophet, confrontation, consequence. They are point-based messages. But the story of Joseph is not about a moment. It's about a long transformation over time. A full trajectory: jealousy, betrayal, abandonment, temptation, injustice, patience, rise to power, forgiveness. If you cut this into pieces, the meaning collapses. Because the message is not in any single event, it is in how events connect over time. It requires causal continuity. From a structural perspective, this story depends on a chain of causality. One event leads to another: the brothers' jealousy, the well, Egypt, the household, the incident, prison, interpretation of dreams, political power. This is a multi-layered causal system. In narrative theory, meaning here is emergent. It only appears when you see the whole chain. If you fragment it, you lose the system. It is a character-driven narrative, not event-driven. Most Quranic stories are centered on a message delivered, a reaction to that message. They are event-driven. But Joseph's story is different. It is centered on the internal development of a human being. His identity is tested across stages: as a child, as a slave, as a young man under temptation, as a prisoner, as a leader. To understand that transformation, you need continuity. Otherwise, you only see snapshots, not growth. It models longitudinal meaning, not immediate lessons. Most stories in the Quran give you a direct moral outcome: do this. This happens. But here, something more complex is happening. Early events look negative: being thrown into a well, being enslaved, being imprisoned. But later, those same events become part of a larger good. This aligns with what we might call meaning reconstruction over time. In modern terms, this resembles how humans reinterpret their past, only after seeing the full trajectory of their lives. That kind of meaning cannot be delivered in fragments. It needs a continuous narrative. The story functions as a complete system of meaning. If we step back, this story behaves less like a set of lessons and more like a model of life itself. It includes family dynamics, psychological conflict, social hierarchy, moral testing, political responsibility, and eventual reconciliation. This is not a scene. It's a system, and a system has to be seen as a whole. Let's ground it with a simple example. Imagine someone who is highly successful today. If you only see the present, you might say, they were lucky. But if you see the full story, the failures, rejection, isolation, struggle, then a completely different meaning emerges. The story of Joseph does exactly that. It refuses to give you the final image without the journey. Final compression. If I had to summarize it precisely, most Quranic stories are modular and message-focused. The story of Joseph is continuous and process-focused. It is presented in one place because its meaning is not in isolated events, but in the structure of the entire journey. Now here's the more interesting question. If this story had been fragmented like the others, what layer of meaning do you think we would have lost? If we step back and analyze this rigorously, using tools from narrative theory, psychology, and systems thinking, the story of Joseph stands out as a structurally and functionally distinct narrative within the Qur'an. Let's break the differences down precisely. Narrative architecture. Integrated versus modular. Most Quranic stories are modular. Segments appear across different surahs. Each segment serves a specific rhetorical function: warning, argument, reminder. The Joseph narrative is fully integrated, a single, continuous narrative unit. Clear beginning, development, resolution, no external fragmentation, magnifying glass in formal terms. It approximates a complete narrative arc rather than a distributed narrative system. Narrative driver. Character-driven versus event-driven. Typical Quranic narratives are event-driven. A prophet delivers a message. A community reacts. A consequence follows. Joseph's story is character-driven. The central axis is the internal evolution of Joseph. Events matter only insofar as they shape his development. Magnifying glass in narrative theory. This aligns with character-centric storytelling, not message-centric episodic narration. Causal structure. Complex sequential causality versus simple moral causality. In many stories, causality is direct and compressed. Rejection, punishment. In Joseph's story, causality is multi-layered and sequential. Example chain, jealousy, abandonment, relocation, new social position, crisis, imprisonment, access to new networks, political authority, magnifying glass. This reflects nonlinear emergent causality in complex systems. Meaning is not immediate, it emerges over time. Temporal structure, snapshot versus longitudinal timeline. Most Quranic stories operate on compressed time slices. Joseph's story unfolds across a long temporal horizon: childhood, adolescence, adulthood, governance. Magnifying glass analytically, this resembles a longitudinal model of human development, rather than episodic illustration. Psychological complexity, binary versus multi-layered characters. In many narratives, characters are binary coded, believer versus disbeliever. In Joseph's story, characters exhibit psychological depth and evolution. Examples: the brothers, from aggression, guilt, transformation. The wife of the minister, desire, denial, eventual admission. Joseph, stable identity under varying pressures. Magnifying glass. This indicates high psychological realism and internal complexity. Mode of divine action, direct intervention versus mediated causation. In other stories, divine action is often explicit and interventionist. Miracles, destruction, supernatural events. In Joseph's story, outcomes unfold through ordinary causal mechanisms, dreams, social interactions, political processes, economic planning. Magnifying glass conceptually. Providence operates through natural causation, not overt disruption of it. Thematic core, external compliance versus meaning reconstruction. Most narratives emphasize acceptance or rejection of divine message. Moral consequence. Joseph's story centers on meaning making under adversity. Early events appear negative: betrayal, slavery, imprisonment. Later, they are reinterpreted as necessary steps in a larger structure. Magnifying glass. This aligns with cognitive reappraisal and meaning reconstruction in modern psychology. Resolution type. Didactic closure versus existential closure. Typical endings, explicit moral outcome, clear reward, punishment schema. Joseph's ending resolves multiple layers simultaneously: personal trauma, family rupture, social crisis, narrative promise, the initial dream. Magnifying glass. This is Existential closure, not just moral closure. Everything falls into place, not just good is rewarded. Functional scope, local lesson versus full system model. Most stories function as targeted moral illustrations. Joseph's story functions as a full system simulation of human life. It integrates psychology, emotion, desire, resilience, sociology, family, class, power, economics, famine management, politics, governance, ethics, forgiveness, restraint. Magnifying glass in systems terms. It is a multi-domain integrated model, not a single domain lesson. Precise summary: the story of Joseph differs from other Quranic narratives in that it is structurally integrated, not modular. Character-driven, not event-driven. Based on complex, emergent causality, not direct moral causality. Temporally longitudinal, not episodic. Psychologically multi-layered, not binary. Reliant on naturalistic processes, not overt miracles. Centered on meaning reconstruction, not only moral instruction. Resolved through existential integration, not just didactic closure. And functionally operates as a complete model of human experience. If we compress all of this into one sentence, most Quranic stories deliver targeted messages. The story of Joseph constructs a coherent model of life unfolding through time. Now the deeper question becomes, if a text includes one narrative that behaves like a full